Hey everybody, this is Jason Alba. So weird day today. I normally do this about an hour and a half ago, but I had some stuff that I had to take care of with utility company. You know how they tell you they're going to be there in a 4-hour window. And so anyways, my whole day got shifted, but that's okay. We are good. I think it's important to have consistency. So I'm doing these every day for the whole month, and hopefully they're valuable to you. I think one of the most important or impressive things for me is that I've actually been able to wear a different shirt every time. I guess this is the 15th time, and I'm running out of shirts. So we'll see if I can make it through the end of the month. Anyways, the course that I want to talk about today is called Presenting to the Bosses. And this is actually a pretty cool course. I definitely had in mind, who I was presenting to. So years and years ago, let's see, this is close to 2000, I guess, 2000, all the way through 2006. I worked at a company where the main executive, the president, the decision maker was, I don't know, maybe in his 60s. And he's since retired, leader in the community, a leader in the company. He definitely made the decisions. Everything went through him that needed to, right? Like he was good at delegating and stuff like that. But when you were in an executive committee meeting with him, which I was plenty of times, and then later on I was on the board as well as the executive committee for the IT company that I was general manager of. It was clear that he was the chairman of the board and he was the leader of the executive committee. And while he would defer to other people, he would definitely, when it was time to make the final decision, everybody kind of look at him, and he would make a little speech and then make the final call. And it was interesting to be in that situation where you could see the power, on the executive committee. I don't remember, 6 or 7 people were on the executive committee. It seemed like, that's my memory anyways. And you had some people who had certain sway and power and influence and experience, and some people who had no power. It was really interesting. Of course, they had power because they were on the executive committee, but in the meetings, maybe they didn't keep up. Like if it got very technical with technology or with accounting and some stuff where you had to do some critical analysis, some of the people would, kind of get bored, or it wasn't their specialty and they didn't understand what the heck you were talking about. And it was really interesting. So I had plenty of years of presenting specifically to that group. And when I created this course, Presenting to the Bosses, that's really what was on my mind. I've done presentations to other people in power and authority for most of my career, I guess all of my career, and in college. Really in college, I didn't necessarily look at my professors and think, oh my gosh, they're so authoritative and they have so much power, and I'm always going to respect them. I think there was a lot of them that I didn't respect, which I'm sure was a little bit bad on me. But they didn't earn my respect, and they didn't command respect, and not all of them. Some of them did, but in general, I didn't feel like I really needed to not suck up, but work really hard to earn their respect. But they did have an impact on my grades and potentially on my being able to graduate on time. So there was a certain kind of power that they had. So, but really the most of this course that as I was preparing it, had a lot to do with thinking about the executives at that organization, executive team, and the board, and watching people come in and do pitches, vendor pitches or partnership pitches or anything like that. But it was really interesting to see what was effective and what was not effective. So in this course, let me just clean this up here just a little bit. So in this course, there's 3 modules. It's 2 hours long. And the first module is preparing for an outstanding presentation. I'm really big on preparation. Most of my courses, for example, the informational interview course, the first module is preparation. The second module is when you're in the interview. And the third module is outside of the interview. And this is pretty similar. So the first module is preparing for an outstanding presentation. The second module is optimizing the presentation. And the third module is what do you do afterwards, which is the debrief, which I'm really, really big on. I mentioned this probably, and more than mention, I go into this and how to debrief and what it looks like probably on at least half a dozen courses. And then follow-up, the all-powerful follow-up. This morning I got a comment on one of my courses. I think it was on my listening course where somebody said, I just really didn't appreciate the power and importance of follow-up. And this is something that I'm going to be working on. And I loved that comment because I am really big on follow-up. All right, so let's just dive in real quick. Preparing for an outstanding presentation. What are the goals of the presentation? Understanding the purpose of why you're even there. Sometimes people walk into a room, and I've seen this happen where they walk in and they're like, I have 5 points and I'm going to get through all 5 of my points. And let's say it's a persuasive presentation or a sales pitch or something like that. And a rookie salesperson is like, you know, they already won the sale and they're like, wait, I have 2 more things that I have to tell you. And it's like, no, shut up. You've won. Like, you've communicated what you needed to. They made a decision. Even though you didn't communicate your last 2 points, they might have already had that information from other places or somehow felt enough confidence about that. And I'm not saying that you should always not share the last 2 points or whatever the remaining points are. But if the goal or the purpose of the presentation is to get a yes and an approval so you can move on to the next stage, then once you get that, it's time to be quiet and stop, right? So anyways, understanding what your goal of the presentation is, the anatomy of a presentation, breaking it down into the different components. Envisioning a successful presentation is going into the vision exercise where, I mean, really, when I do my presentations on stage, I will close my eyes and just mentally walk through the success of that presentation. And I might even imagine questions and the dialogue and people taking notes. I mean, I really get really deep into the visualization of what I'm about to do. And that helps me put my mind in a proper place. And it actually, you know, kind of like the power of meditation where it helps you like stop or slow down other stimuli that's coming into your brain. And as you're going through this exercise, you're practicing for the real thing. You're going through it. You have the opportunity to think about, hey, here is a scenario that might come up, or here's a way I was going to say something that doesn't make sense right now. So anyways, visualization is so powerful, and I do it a lot for a lot of the things that I do. If I were to walk into a really important presentation, I would absolutely do a visualization. A couple years ago when I was interviewing for a job, I did a lot of visualizing. I did it before I got in the car. I did it in the parking lot at the company. I walked through that scenario multiple times so that I could be better prepared when I was in there. That's one of the more important tactics that I talk about in a number of my courses. Breaking down the objectives, understanding your audience, which is actually a course, understanding your audience. And over the last couple of months, it's been one of my more popular courses. It's fairly new, but it's still been more popular than I expected it to be. Preparing your visual tools, which might be your PowerPoints and stuff like that. I'm really big on, let's see if I talk about it here. I don't have it in here. I might have it in the next module, but I'm really big on removing distractions. And so, for example, when I do a presentation on Jibber Jobber or on LinkedIn, right, and it's a live webinar, sometimes what I'll do is I'll grab screenshots, put them into a PowerPoint, and then use the PowerPoint because I'm not quite sure how fast the internet is going to be or how fast LinkedIn or Jibber Jobber are going to be. And if you're doing a presentation, you click on something and it takes a couple of seconds, that might be okay. But man, if it takes 5 or 10 seconds, honestly, you're going to start losing people. That's when people are like checking their phone and looking at other stuff and starting to have side conversations. And it's hard to pull people back from that. So if this is a high stakes, really important, critical communication and presentation, you want to make sure you remove as many distractions as you can. This could include cleaning up your slides to have very little information except what's most important. It could be making sure that the images that you have or the colors that you have are simple and completely streamlined and on brand so that they're not distracting. I've been in presentations where somebody will bring up a picture of a cat playing and it's like, that's cute, but what does it have to do with this presentation? Then my mind goes down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what they're talking about and what the relevance is of that image. And I've lost 10 or 15 seconds of them talking, right? And so I want to make sure that you're really, really clean on what your messaging is, visual, audio, all that stuff, and remove those distractions. I call it mental friction. When something comes into us and we're like, what's going on? What is that? And you start to decipher and think about something that's taking your thinking ability away from what the current conversation is. I talk about using or not using facts. I talk about getting information from other people in your preparation, right? So if you're walking into a meeting or let me rephrase that. If you know you're going to go into a really high stakes meeting, why not interview other people at the company to try and figure out what's going on and what the real needs are and maybe what the hot buttons are for the particular people that you're presenting to, things that they like or things that really turn them off. And first impressions and then I have some thoughts on impromptu meetings where you really don't have any time to prepare. All right, so let's jump over to the second module, optimizing the presentation, staying true to the purpose, the objectives that you set up. And I talk about nailing the first impression, controlling the room. Did you know that when you walk into an environment where a professional speaker has been brought in, that professional speaker has done things to manage and control the room, including setting up chairs? Professional speakers have been known to set up or change the setup of chairs. Why? Because they understand that, let's say, for example, they're by a picture window, and even if it isn't like super bright and stuff like that, there still might be cars going by in the background, and that's just really distracting. It's like when I go to a restaurant and I want you to pay attention to me, I sit so I can see the TVs, hoping that you can't, right? I try and position you so that there's nothing really distracting behind me, because I don't want to sit at lunch with you and have you stare at the TV for half the time. So there's different ways that you can control the room. Talk about eye contact and the different ways to use your voice. Did you just catch that? I just said the different ways to use your voice. And then did you just catch that, right? So we can do things with our voice. What happens, for example, when your mom or dad starts to whisper very slowly at you? Like you start paying more attention, right? And so there's different, I'm not suggesting that you whisper slowly and threatening or menacingly at these executives, but there's ways that you can change your voice and have people pay more attention, especially when you get a feeling that people aren't paying attention, or maybe they're looking at the handouts that you gave them and they're getting distracted with that. There's ways that you can bring them back. Okay, choosing the audience appropriate language. I was in a presentation a while ago and somebody did something very inappropriate, and it was funny-ish. And it was, I don't know, I didn't think it was funny. I could see how other people would think it was funny, but it was inappropriate for the setting and for who else was in the room. And the interesting thing is some of these decision makers might get turned off or offended at certain things that really are offensive. I'm not saying that they're like super sensitive and you have to walk on eggshells around them, but man, there's certain things that you can do that turn them off. And the interesting thing is when you're presenting something to me and you say or do something offensive, I kind of don't care about any of your message anymore. You've completely turned me off. And so I talk about being careful with that. I remember, I don't know if I talk about this in in the course, but there was a time when I went to lunch with somebody and they were really rude to the waitress, just very hierarchical, right? So they were like, "Hey, come over and do this," and just rude, talking rude, and I was like, I wanted to have a partnership with you, but I saw the way that you treated this person, and I really don't want to work with you at all now, because if you treat that person who is a human that way, how are you going to treat, other people that we're going to deal with? Let's see. I talk about how to present prototypes, how to handle interruptions, which executives like to do, how to handle questions when you don't know an answer, how to substantiate what your claims are. I remember with this particular president, when I first started at that company, the newsletter came out and I skimmed through it. And he walked by and he said, "Hey, great newsletter, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, I read it." And he's like, "Oh, you did? What about this?" And he quizzed me on it. And I don't know, this guy, he always quizzed you on stuff. And so it's like everybody around him lied to him or something. I don't know. But I learned pretty quick that if I were to make a claim, I had to be able to have a conversation about that claim. And it was kind of annoying, but it actually made me really think deeply about, first of all, what claims I was making, but also how I would, I'm going to say the word defend, although I didn't feel like I had to be in defensive mode all the time, but how I would defend what my statements were and have a deeper and better conversation. What do you do when you lose control and when your team presents with you? If anybody's been to college and you have to do a team presentation where one person stands at four people stand at the front of the room, one person's talking and the other three people are like, "Where do I put my hands? Like, when do I say something? Like, my turn's in 20 minutes. Shouldn't I be sitting down right now?" Right? So there's some of those dynamics. And then I talk about virtual presentations, which is kind of funny because nowadays everything is virtual presentations. Okay, in the last module, I talk about the debrief and the follow-up. I talk about a personal debrief, which is so powerful and so important. And you don't need anything. You don't need anybody. You don't have to wait. You can do a personal debrief on your own right away and get a lot of value out of that. Talk about debriefing with a team. I talk about figuring out who was in the meeting and who had power and who needed to be followed up with in which way and stuff like that. Talk about the first follow-up, and then I talk about future follow-ups, which is a lot of professional networking, right? And then I talk about issues that were maybe unresolved in the meeting and how you can address those in your follow-ups, which is really powerful. So anyways, that's it. This is my course on presenting to the bosses. The best way to find my stuff is to go to Google and type in Jason Alba Pluralsight. Or if you know what a particular topic is, then just go to Google and type in Pluralsight and then whatever the topic is. Of course, you can always go into Pluralsight and do a search there. Notice at the top of your screen, towards the top of your screen, you have this colorful button that says sign up now next to free April. So this is April 2020 and Pluralsight has opened up their entire library for everybody. So here's the deal. You got 9 days left. And honestly, the longest I've ever seen a free thing before was a weekend. And so that I remember. And so go in and you still have 9 days. It's like 3 weekends worth of time. Go in and watch some courses, whether you're learning about new programming or design or product management, project management, business analysis, graphics arts, whatever it is. There's probably about 300 professional development and soft skill courses. I have 34 of those. There are some great courses on career management, job search, stuff like that. I actually just created a new job search channel, which I linked to for my blog today, which is 4/21 of 2020. Go find that post about the Pluralsight job search channel where there are, I think, 12 or 13 specific courses to job seekers. If you're watching this after April of 2020, then hit me up and I hopefully can get you a 30-day pass on Pluralsight or talk to another Pluralsight author that you might be able to network into. Most of us usually can ask for 30-day passes. So hopefully that'll help you out. With that, good luck presenting to bosses. This is a soft skill professional development skill set that you should be working on. You might not be presenting to bosses now, but when the time comes, you don't want to have to cram on this stuff. This is general good practice for communication. Good luck.